Good evening. This is Critical Talk with Professor Aminah Al-Deen. Please excuse my bad voice. Uh, I am happy to be interviewing, talking with, discussing with newer kids. I was an old school watcher of what was it called? Um, the sticks, Veggietales.
Right, Veggietales.
And after about 20 episodes, they let us know that they were a Christian group.
Allahu Akbar.
And little things start after that to slip in. So then I had to turn it off. But nevertheless, now I discovered Nor Kids and all my short grandkids are involved. So,
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Nasser, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Professor Amina. When I was a kid growing up in Maple Grove, Minnesota, I used to love playing baseball. My mom, she'd come and she'd sit in the stands and she would cheer. But growing up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Maple Grove, which is a suburb where there weren't very many Muslims or very much diversity, friends would start to tease my mom. They made fun of my mom because of her hijab, her headscarf. And look, when I was 13 years old, and I think like many 13-year-olds in middle school, my goal was to fit in.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult. So I'm not proud of this, but the reality was I began telling my mom to pick me up 15 minutes after my baseball games were finished because I didn't want anyone to see my mom. I didn't want anyone to know that I was a Muslim. I wanted to fit in. Now,
Yeah.
fast forward many years later, I remember when my sister, Shireen, had her first. This was about 9 years ago. Now, at that time, Professor Amina, there was a masjid that was being built in New York City. It was called the Ground Zero Masjid. And there was so much uproar about it. And I thought to myself, I don't want my niece to grow up not being proud of who she is. I want her to be comfortable in her own skin. And so that put us on a path to develop newer kids. And alhamdulillah, today, we have a team of, 15 educators, creatives, researchers who are putting together this work. And, we pray that Allah puts barakah in it. It has been a labor of love. So now, what's interesting is my background had absolutely nothing to do with children's anything.
Yeah.
I used to be, it's called mergers and acquisitions. So I used to be in charge of like buying and selling companies and things like that. So the way the story goes, my older brother, Muhammad, he was at Harvard. He was at Harvard University as a part of his MBA program. And in his MBA program, what they ask you to do is they ask you to solve a problem that you're passionate about. So we said, hey, look, this is a problem that we want to solve because we're passionate about it. And alhamdulillah, out of, like 100 different entries in their like competition, they said that, our idea was the best idea. So they gave us, initial $5,000 to get started as like an award, winning thing. And, alhamdulillah, with the support of my wife and the support of my dad and a community of over 10,000 Muslim families across North America, alhamdulillah, our work is now a reality. And so, we offer a number of tools for families. Our primary tool it's called an akhlaq building program, which is designed to help Muslim children between the ages of 4 and 9 build not just confidence in their identity, but also a genuine love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Quran.
So why is it important for Muslim children to have these resources?
I honestly don't know. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I have a perspective on this. So look, so what I would share with you is the following, right? We actually took a very academic approach towards solving this problem because the issue that I had, right, when I talked about my issue with baseball, that's when I was 13 years old, right? When we think about like an identity crisis, 7-year-old or a 6-year-old isn't bleaching their hair blonde and calling themselves a Mo instead of Muhammad. That doesn't happen at a young age. That happens in perhaps middle school or high school or college or later on. But what we know is that by the time a child is 9 years old, a significant part of their lifelong identity has been established. So the metaphor is that of a tree. If a tree, has strong roots, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Quran too, in Surah Ibrahim, if a tree has strong roots, right, that tree is really not going to be going anywhere, and inshallah it'll bear good fruit. But if those roots are weak, well then, we hope and pray that they'll be able to, survive a storm. And so for us, the focus on early childhood, right, is where we get the highest return on investment. If we as parents, as we as educators, as we as community leaders really try to help our children build a strong foundation in faith, inshallah, our belief is that it will pay off in dividends as those children grow up and become parts of our community.
Well, we know that most in the U.S., when kids go to public school, there's evening and weekend religious school. But with newer kids, they have the opportunity to do every evening. For kids who are not yet school ready, they can go.
Yeah. And I mean, look, so here's what I would add, right? What I would add is two things. Number one is our goal is not any way, shape, or form to replace schooling or weekend Islamic school or anything like that. Like Allahu Akbar, there's a very important role that these institutions play within our community. And by the way, what the research shows is that these institutions, like the home community, it's called a community of practice, right? It's like these are the kids that my child is growing up with. They play a huge role in what that child believes about himself or herself. So our goal is to be, of a service to help. And so we often partner with weekend Islamic schools or full-time Islamic schools to be a service to them. But what I would share is this. Anytime, I think about my religious education, I think about cough syrup because I feel like it was like, going to Sunday school or reading a book about Islam. It was like medicine. It was something that I needed to do because mom and dad said, look, you need to read this. You need to do this. Is what you got to do. Right. And this is sometimes our connotation with school. And our goal from the outset was to say, look, if that is the reason why kids are picking up our books, then we have not been successful. We need to develop something that is genuinely kid-friendly, that when a boy or girl is going to sleep at night and is deciding which book they want to read before they go to bed, we want them to pick Noor Kids because they genuinely enjoy it and it's fun. They do. And so that's what we attempt to do. And even with our online programs, especially in a world now where, gosh, everything is virtual and everything is distance learning. With the class that we're doing right now, we're doing one around the advice that Luqman, may Allah be pleased with him, provides feedback to his son as detailed in the Quran. Our goal is not for children to be like, oh no, this is what I got to do. It's Thursday. No, we want kids to be looking forward to it.
Let me, hopefully, let me see if I can share my screen. I want to show just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Oh, I get a kick out of this. You would not believe.
Oh my goodness. The scariest trip I ever took was to San Antonio. Get ready, people. Get ready. Explain. When I was 26 years old, my mom came to me and issued me an order. I said, Mom, what's that? She said, Amin, I need grandchildren. I said, but Mom, I'm not even married. She said, why don't you fix that? So when I was 26 years old, with my mom's help, I was introduced to a little lady named Sana. She happened to live in San Antonio. Now, I didn't visit Sana right away. I started by writing letters. I would take out a piece of paper and grab a pen and letter like, Dear Sana, it is a pleasure to meet your acquaintance. My name is Amin. My favorite color is blue. I love the Minnesota Vikings and lasagna. Thanks, Amin. P.S. On hot days, sometimes I look up at the sun and I'm like, sun. Ah. And when I do that, I remember your name, Sana. That was a joke. P.S.S. I have also enclosed my resume for your father to
This is hilarious.
Sana and I wrote letters. That way we could get to know each other. But a time came when I came to the conclusion that Sana was the person I wanted to get married to. Why? Well, because she was honest, because she was trustworthy, because she was humble, because she was generous, because she had a knack for writing children's books, because she loved cooking lasagna, because she loved the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I should stop. My mom and dad said, Amin, it's time for you to meet Sana's parents. They lived in San Antonio. I remember going on the flight, getting ready to go and meet her parents. I thought to myself, oh man, I really hope that they like me. Oh man, I really hope that they approve of me. Oh man, I really hope that they want me as a son. So I remember being on that airplane on my way from Minnesota to San Antonio thinking to myself, wow, well, I hope my shirt is good. Oh wow, I hope they don't serve burritos because I have a tendency to spill burritos on my shirt. Oh wow, I hope I smell good and I wore enough perfume. And when I finally landed in San Antonio, I remember clicking on the doorbell. I remember putting my finger on the doorbell. And when I put my finger on the doorbell, it went ding dong. And I met Sana and her mom and her dad. And the rest, as they say, is history. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Amin, so what happened to this Sana? Did you end up marrying this Sana? What ended up happening to her? And the answer is yes, I did end up marrying her, and she was amazing, and I'm still married to her today. And by the way, I thought I might share that story because I've been giving her a little bit of grief about lasagna at home, and so I thought I'd just showcase that by sharing that story.
I love it.
Today, alhamdulillah. Well, and so I just want to add one more quick thing, right? Because people are like, well, what did that story have to do? So the second part of that story, that was the story where we talked about. Oh man, when Sana's mom meet me, I hope they like me. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are talking about that. We are talking about our appearance. We have to pause that.
Stop it.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Please stop.
Is there a way?
I don't know where my producer went.
Oh no. Is there on your screen, if you were sharing your screen, is there a way to just pause it on the screen? Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today, inshallah, we are going to be talking about a subject called cleanliness. But before there we go.
I think my producer went
Perfect. So let me just add a little bit of context to that, right? So context number one is saying that. So that was a way for me to introduce this concept of cleanliness, right? Because that, the message that we're going to share in that program, and by the way, there are about 30 minutes that we listened to about 3 minutes of that, but it was to introduce this concept of cleanliness. And one of the things that we know from a religious point of view is that cleanliness is important because we as Muslims want to ensure that we are kind of putting our best foot forward, right? When we are meeting individuals, that we want to, as Muslims, look beautiful, and to beautify ourselves and to be clean. And so in that story I was trying to articulate, and what I was connecting it to was saying, hey, I was meeting important people, and because I was meeting important people, I wanted to look good, I wanted to smell good, I wanted to, be my best self. And so
Well,
that,
let me tell you this.
please.
I got that. But you know what I got before that?
Please.
As you tap on your phone, is the importance of composing and writing a letter, which people don't do anymore, and having a postscript. You see? I
Yeah.
mean, to get kids to understand that there are various ways of communicating, and to write a letter means you really have to stop and think about it. What am I going to say? Is my penmanship okay? How am I going to get it to the person? Oh my God, I got to use the mail. You see, I get a stump.
100%.
I got to get somebody tall enough to reach the post box.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And what I would share as well, right, is, okay, we do like a teacher training, and it's interesting because what we try to do as much as possible is again use research in our approach towards education. So what you heard in that segment, and what you would hear in most of the newer kids work, is we draw on personal stories. Like me as a teacher,
Right.
I draw on personal situations in my life, and I share that. Now, what that does is two things. Number one is it creates a connection with the viewers, because I'm not talking about some hypothetical situation. No, I'm being a human being, and as teachers, for example, or as parents, one of the best ways that we can teach is by being a role model. And so it's our goal then is, through these videos and through these programs, is to try to make it at a human level, not try to be make religion something that is not relatable. Like it's in our life. It's something that we deal with on a daily basis. So that's what we attempt to do.
Is it possible, like Veggietales, for example, to make these wonderful concepts available to kids of other faiths?
So that's a very interesting question. And the answer is yes, but with an asterisk next to it.
Okay.
So we have been working on a really interesting effort related to animated videos, similar to Veggietales. Okay. And as a part of that, we, alhamdulillah, had the opportunity to work with just so many advisors around that process. And so many people said, Amin, these stories that you're talking about, our curriculum, majority of our curriculum has to do with akhlaq, character, things like honesty and patience and trust and altruism. Yeah. And a big part of it has to do with, global citizenship, our commitment to the environment, our commitment to, standing up against injustice, so on and so forth. Aren't those things that are universal? And yeah, they are universal. Yes, they are. However, the trap that we don't want to fall into is to kind of water down our work, because look, our primary goal, and there's different organizations that have different purposes, but for us, I'm trying to solve a very specific problem. It's a problem that I had, and it is for Muslim children. I want the children to use our resources to become proud in who they are and to build a foundational understanding of their faith. Now, that said, yes, we talk about the Quran in our stories. Yes, we quote hadith and narrations from our Prophet, peace and blessings be on him. And what we have found is that there are many like-minded Christians and Jews who benefit from our work, because they see the they see God in our work as well, and so they benefit from it. And so we welcome that. We're excited for that, but we don't actively try to change our work such that it becomes more palatable for people who are not Muslims.
Well, not palatable, but useful.
Yeah,
Kids need all the moral lessons, and for many of us who are not ethnocentric, we have kids of all faiths inside our family.
right.
Yeah,
And alhamdulillah, it's been amazing to see that. So a couple of the stories that we've observed, right? So look, we alhamdulillah, Noor Kids, we serve about 10,000 families. One of the biggest things I've learned, Professor Aminah, is the diversity that exists within the Muslim community.
right.
Diversity in terms of, look, sometimes we confuse to think, oh, all Muslim kids have a mom and a dad. Well, no, there's many divorced families, and we have to make sure that we are serving them. We might assume that, and oftentimes what will happen, what we've experienced is a dad who is Muslim and a mom who may not be Muslim. And so what we've discovered is that our work becomes even more valuable for that home because, you know, it's interesting because if someone were to pick up a textbook that says Islam 101, I mean,
Right.
that takes a lot of, thought and concentration to say, okay, I'm going to pick up this book, Islam 101. But as someone who may not identify as being Muslim, to see a children's book and to read that children's book, what a great way to actually learn about the faith.
Hold that book closer to the screen.
So this book is called Noor Kids Go to Hajj. Of course, I have it in front of me because we were just talking about this story because Hajj is right around the corner.
Right.
But certainly, yes, there are a number of non-Muslims who, what's also interesting is hospitals. So our work has found its way into hospitals all around North America because, especially as there are chaplains in these hospitals, look for resources that will connect with, children and faith-based content as well. And so what ended up happening is we'll get emails from people who are non-Muslim and who read our work and say, wow, like this is very similar to my own belief. And we really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, recently here in Chicagoland, um, our city powers that be decided that children must learn about LBT. Oh, no, no, no. I'm gonna mess this up. The alphabet group.
Yeah, yeah.
And how can parents give their children the necessary resources to understand what they're being forced to learn?
So, Dr. Amina, this is a great question, and I want to share my thoughts on this. And I also want to respect the fact that I am not the subject matter expert on this specific topic, right? But
Okay.
that said, I want to share a couple of notes. Note number one is that this is not a problem that is only being experienced in Chicago. This is in Canada. So about 3 years ago, in Toronto, there was a landmark kind of situation wherein, in elementary school, the discussion of same-sex marriage and the introduction of literature that that makes same-sex marriage a common kind of element, among the experience of children is something that is actually part of the curriculum.
Right.
So what communities and parents, the playbook that they used was one where, number one, there began a increased investment into Islamic schools and into homeschooling.
Oh,
And I want to share because alhamdulillah, we've had the opportunity to visit perhaps 400 full-time and weekend Islamic schools across North America. And one of the hallmarks of a successful community is where the community invests into these resources, and they need to be invested into. And here's why. A private full-time Islamic school, I mean, it doesn't receive any government funding. It is completely funded by, people and through, charitable gifts. And so therein lies a little bit of a challenge, because if a parent is thinking, okay, well, I want my child to get, a high quality academic secular education, but I also want them to get a high quality theological education. I would love to be able to provide that through a full-time Islamic school.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, because many of these institutions don't get enough funding, parents are forced with a decision. Do I stay at the public school that is, very high performing, but perhaps they're going to be exposed to ideas that I'm not comfortable with, or do I expose them to or include them in a full-time Islamic school where perhaps they'll get the theological background that I'm really excited about, but in terms of the quality of the education, it isn't where I'm comfortable with. So anyways, moral of the story is a couple of things. Number one, what I would share is this communicates the importance of us investing into these resources because they are critical. But number two, another alternative that is available and that I think a lot of parents haven't seriously thought about is homeschooling. And the travel that we've done in Toronto, in Dallas, in places like Tampa Bay, and places like San Jose, the resources that are available for homeschooling are so so incredible now. In fact, even with my own daughter, we've decided to homeschool. And look, it is a little bit, it's unique. Parents have to make that decision. It's not easy, right? So, for a husband and a wife, or for a family, however that family might be structured, that is a serious investment to invest into.
It's also what the pandemic has taught us is parents are reassessing how much they like their kids. God, I'm not a teacher, and oh my God, I can't do all the compartmentalization that a child needs for structure during a day.
And here's what I'd say, right? And of course, different strokes for different folks, and appreciating diversity within the community. And of course, there's also a financial element here too, because some parents need to work, and that's the reality of it. We're framing this conversation around a specific issue that is LGBT. I want to take a step back, and I want to just completely sidebar.
Okay.
When we talk about the first 9 years of a child's life, and the fact that during these first 9 years, that is when a child is establishing their identity. And that is when, we have the highest return on investment. The single most important variable, Professor Aminah, that impacts a child's understanding of who they are. And this is research that was done in the United States, replicated in Europe, replicated in Southeast Asia, replicated in Africa. So this is like, in terms of theory with respect to education, this is like at a very, very, very high level, or people very strongly believe in this. The single most important variable that impacts a child's understanding of who they are, it's not where they go to school. It's not who their teacher is. It's not how affluent they are. It is the quality of the relationship that child has with their mom or their dad, the relationship a child has with their parents at a young age. Now, this is actually really interesting because there's so much conversation that often happens around schooling and where I decide to, have my kids go. A lot of families are really focused on extracurriculars. Oh man, my kids have to be involved in X, and if they don't get involved in X, then they're not going to go to Harvard, and if they don't go to Harvard, they're not going to be successful. Like, this is how Muslim people are thinking. And we have to reframe the discussion, because during these first 9 years, the most valuable investment a mom or a dad can make is that quality time, that loving touch.
Yeah, but if you can't work, you can't eat, and you have no time.
And you're exactly right. You're 100% right. So, of course, there are restrictions, and if families can't provide that, then, it is what it is. But, for families that can provide it, but elect not to, right? And that's fine, right? Again, different strokes for different folks, right? There's different situations. What I'm highlighting is, and even by the way, if a child attends public school, or if a child attends weekend or full-time Islamic school, it doesn't absolve the parent of quality time, right?
Exactly.
Like either way, even if the children are involved in these, the moral of the story is quality time, quality time, quality time.
Yeah, but that's why I was asked with this issue in particular, and as many religious communities have risen up here. Nor Kids provides an excellent platform to give the kids a way to understand what they're being taught and not to shun, not to bully, not to do any of those things, but a way to interpret the information that's coming in.
Yeah, and alhamdulillah, we do our best. Now, again, our focus is on ages 9 and younger, and so we
Nine is what, third grade, fourth grade?
yes, so nine would be third grade, right? 9 would be third grade, and so I mean, we do the best that we can to serve and to make difficult concepts relatable and at a child's level. So, for example, with respect to Black Lives Matter and the conversation on racism, even within the Muslim community,
Right.
we've actually created specific content for that. With respect to COVID-19, we actually created a course that was specifically around the idea of internalizing, this idea of what's going on, and it was a 10-part course where we explored everything from death to the idea of cleanliness, to the idea of patience, to the idea of why can bad things happen to good people.
Right.
Um,
That's awesome.
so on and so forth. So we do our best. Now that said, we are limited. I mean, I want to say that we, where we can add value, we do, but where we are not equipped, we try to stay in our lane. And I will say, with this conversation with the LGBT, this is not a conversation that we have, addressed head on. A part of it is, we are not we're not equipped to do it just yet. We're
No.
just not.
Okay. How do you plan to expand your resources?
Well, we plan on expanding our resources in a couple of ways. One is geographically. So for a long time, New York Kids has only been available in the U.S. and Canada. And alhamdulillah, we have developed a partnership with a really great Muslim organization based in Iowa that has allowed us to make it available across the world. So that's been a big deal.
Oh, very big deal.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So look, what we're really focused on right now are, a couple of things. So one is, we're working on this project related to animated video, and I'm really excited about it. We're aiming for this, we're shooting for the stars in the same way that or Veggietales was able to connect with, people like Netflix to make it available across the world.
Right,
That's
right.
our intent. That's what we're trying to do. Number two is with respect to supporting weekend and full-time Islamic schools. This 2020 year is not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging, but we are all in it together. So, we are trying our best to, develop solutions that, teachers can use and benefit from. And then finally, thinking more about, how do we connect with families online? So, by creating online classes. So like I mentioned, right now, every member of Noor Kids has the opportunity to join a online camp that we're doing over the summer months.
Can you stop and say more about the online camp, how they can join, when it starts?
Yes. Well, I'm glad you asked. So when I was a kid,
100 years ago.
a hundred years ago, my family was, Allahu Akbar, amazing. And during the summer months, that was my time to memorize the Quran. That was my time to learn, how to read the Quran. But I never actually built a genuine connection with it, in that I never really began to look at the Quran as like a resource. Like, wow, this is like a guide for my life. So this summer, what our goal is to help children build a genuine relationship with the Quran. Now, the way that we're doing that is we are doing a 10-week in-depth discussion on the advice that Luqman al-Hakim, the wise, gives to his son, as detailed in the Quran. So we're basically reading the Quran and we're looking at these specific advice that Luqman has given to his son. And we've looked at, commentators that are, commentators of merit, and then basically discussing these and incorporating into our life. Now, what's fascinating, I mean, it's so fascinating because Professor Aminah, if I were to ask you, right, you said you have grandchildren.
Too many.
If you were to like summarize, right, if you were to say, hey, grandchild, this is my advice to you, it's a pretty exciting concept.
I think it's great.
And so Luqman, I mean, think about it. He gave 10 pieces of advice to his child, and these 10 pieces of advice were so profound that this man, who's not even a prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honors him by saying, I'm including this advice in the Quran for people to read over and over and over again, until the end of times. And so the way it works is every Thursday, there is a actual class, okay? And there's like 2 parts of the class, and children are able to watch it on demand, meaning at their own convenience. And the reason why we do that is because, alhamdulillah, we have people in the UK and people in Qatar and people in Saudi and, of course, people in the US and Canada. But, they have to be able to watch the class at their own convenience. So they're able to watch it. And in the class, we detail this. Then over the weekend, they have a challenge. All right. So a challenge is like a hands-on project that, we challenge them to do. And by Sunday, they upload it. And once they upload it, it's amazing because Dr. Aminah, you can see all the submissions from all of the kids from around the world. So it creates a little community.
Okay. I'm excited. When does it start?
So it actually has started, right? Because it's July 21st, right?
I know, but can they still sign up?
They can still sign up, and alhamdulillah, we've made it very affordable. So basically, if you become a member of the Noor Kids Akhlaq Building Program, you get it for free. So if you just go to noorkids.com, a 4-month membership is about $30. Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's about 40. It's about $30. And so you get a new book delivered to your home every month, right? That's our primary program. But then in addition, you get the online resources for free. So we try to make it as accessible as possible. And if families can't afford that, send us an email and we'll, provide it as, free of charge.
And,
I mean, we want people to benefit.
What week are we in now?
We just started week 4.
4?
Yep, week 4. Week 4 of week 10. So you still have 6 weeks left.
Okay. So I'm a parent. I just learned about this today. Where do I need to go in the Quran to do the first 3 pieces of guidance?
Yeah, so if you join the class, what's interesting is you can actually see week 1, week 2, week 3. So literally they can if they access the class, they'll be able to see it. So Surah Luqman, of course, it's the 31st chapter of the Quran. And the advice that Luqman begins providing to his child, I believe it starts on the 14th verse. And it's fascinating. I mean, I could talk about it at length. It's so fascinating. And
I am just floored by the fact that you all came up with this. I mean, it's evident at one end, but to put it in this format, it's just awesome.
So can I provide an example for you?
Yes.
All right. So the very first piece of advice that Luqman gives to his son is he tells his son, he says, son, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Polytheism, shirk, is a great injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're talking with 4 to 9-year-old children.
Yeah.
How in the world are we gonna communicate? What does this even mean to like polytheism? Like, what does that even mean? So here's the idea, right? Shirk, the concept here is to worship anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right now, when we think about worship, oftentimes what comes to our mind is like literally like salah, and when we think about polytheism, we'll think about, the people worshiping like idols, right? But really that's kind of missing the mark, right? It's worshiping anything other than Allah. And most often that means worshiping myself and, whatever, obeying my own rules, not the rules of Allah. I'm just going to obey my own rules, Or instead of obeying the rules of Allah, obeying the rules of other people, right? So for most
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
So how do we teach this? How do we teach this? Okay. Dr. Aminah, are you familiar with a Tesla?
Yes.
Okay. So I discovered.
I don't have one.
I don't have one. I don't have one either. I don't know if, inshallah, but anyway, so Tesla created a Tesla Power Wheels. So Power Wheels, like it's like a miniature. Okay, so this, Dr. Aminah, it's amazing. It's made of metal. It's got lights that actually work. It's got like a charger, just like the Tesla charger. It's got alloy wheels. I mean, it's the real deal.
God.
So now, if you imagine, Dr. Aminah, if you got one of these, how would you want to use it? Now, there's a couple of ways that you might use it. One way you might use it is you say, hey, you know what? I got this as a gift. I'm going to use it the way I want to use it. So what I would do is right out of the box, there's a little bit of charge. I would put the keys in the ignition. I would turn it on and I would take it for a drive because that's what I would do. But here's the issue with that. Because I literally don't know better. I don't know the fact that you're actually supposed to charge it first. And if you don't charge it completely, what ends up happening is the battery life forever is going to go down. So if I just used my own laws, if I just followed my own whims and I was like, hey, look, this is what I want to do. Well, yeah, you'll use it. That might be fine. But you might actually be doing harm to that Tesla because you don't even know better. Well, what's another thing you could do? You could use that Tesla the way that other people want you to use it. And you're like, well, what does that mean? What I mean is YouTube. If you go on YouTube, and we actually showed it in the class, the very first video of any person using the Tesla, the one that has the most views, is not of a kid riding the Tesla. It's of someone taking the Tesla and throwing it off of a cliff to see what would happen, because that's what you do on YouTube. That's what you do to get views. That's when you follow the rules of other people. Right? You end up doing things that, are just inappropriate. So now as we think about ourselves, now we don't have a Tesla, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given each of us a body and a soul. Now the question is, how do we want to use it? Do we want to use it based off of our own rules? Well, you could think about doing that, but just like you didn't create the Tesla and you could have messed it up by just following your own rules, we didn't actually create our own selves. And if I just follow my own whims, I mean, I could ruin myself. Like I could
forever
unknowingly, make mistakes that could like really tarnish my soul. If I use my body and my soul and my life in a way to please other people, well, in the same way that Tesla, when people, use that to get likes and views, if I lead my life in that way, well, that could lead to my destruction as well. Really, the best way to use it is to read the instruction manual and to see what the instruction manual says and live our life based on that. And that instruction manual is the Quran and the life of our Prophet.
I'm loving it. Loving it. People out there, sign up.
Well, anyways, it's like, for me, it's like, I get really excited about, taking an idea that, again, as a kid, when I was in Sunday school, someone says, la shirk, like don't do shirk, and that this is, a dhulm, this is an injustice. It was a conversation. Oh yeah, don't worship idols. But come on, it's much more than that.
It is, absolutely. Last question. 5 of my grandkids, well, their parents rather, have signed up for Noor Kids.
Oh, mashallah.
And the things I appreciate is the diversity. Lots of times they're animals, but other times the kids don't get so focused on some other things about race while they're trying to learn the lesson. So have you any plans to teach explicitly about the diversity inside the Muslim community?
Man, that is an amazing question. And there are so many thoughts that come to mind. I want to share 3 of them.
Okay.
Number 1, it is so unfortunate that today in Muslim children's literature, the overwhelming majority of the characters have white faces. When
Yes.
the reality is that even the majority of Muslims in the world don't have white faces. It's just we've idolized this ethnicity that we don't even embody. I mean, talk about
Right.
internalized oppression. Come on. And so we specifically made the decision to make our characters animals. And it's a tool that is often used in children's literature, like, for example, Arthur, if you remember Arthur,
Oh, I
because
know.
because inevitably then they do not have race, and as a
Right.
result, children of any sort of ethnic background could identify with these characters. So we did that very purposefully. Now, number two, when we think about diversity, there is, of course, ethnic diversity.
Right.
But even outside of ethnic diversity, there's familial diversity. Some families are, in a joint family household where grandma is living with the children.
Right.
Some, mom and dad are not together.
Right.
And this is real. This is the reality of our community. But then there's other forms of diversity as well, even in terms of religious diversity, right?
Right.
So, not all Muslim women, decide to observe hijab, right? Now, that said, we have to make editorial decisions to say, well, what does that mean? And how do we ensure that these children are also brought into the work that we're doing and not felt alienated?
Right.
Because oftentimes Muslim work can kind of alienate people who aren't in the first row of Salah. And that's,
Exactly.
we have to make our tent a little bit bigger to include everyone. So we try to make educated decisions as often as we can with the consultation of our scholarly advisors. So we work with a number of amazing scholars like Sheikh Abdel Nasser Jangda and Sheikh Omar Suleiman and Imam Tahir Anwil and Sheikh Rizwan Arastu. So even a diversity of shaykh who, we get advice on to say, hey, how might we tackle this issue? Now, that said, we published a book called, two books. One book was called Different by Design, where we talk about diversity pretty head on. And this idea where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that, I've made you from different nations and tribes such that you may get to know one another. It's an amazing title and it exists. There's another one that is called Getting Along for Good, which talks about this concept of unity.
Can I ask you to give me the titles of those books again?
Yes.
For everybody to know them.
Different by Design.
Uh-huh.
And then the second one is called Getting Along for Good. Now, Getting Along for Good, I would say this is a title that talks about unity within the Muslim community. And again, first, we have, mashallah, a very privileged opportunity to, at a young age, introduce these concepts to our children. And, that is something that is really, I think, exciting because,
it is.
We unfortunately as a community, especially when it gets into the politics of a masjid and, all the grown up kind of problems, there is so much unfortunate disunity, even within the Muslim community, that I'm very proud that we've been able to, I think, tackle the subject in a really robust way.
Well, you've given me more energy than I usually have about this time during the day. And I am so excited because when I first got an email about Noor Kids, I said, yes. And call my daughter-in-law, get it. Call my other daughter-in-law, get it. And we've been extremely pleased.
Dr. Aminah, that means so much.
No, the kids look forward to that book arriving.
It really means so much.
I'm telling you all have done in such a short time an exemplary job.
I'll tell you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in, Hadith Qudsi, he says, take one step towards me and I'll take 10 towards you, walk towards me and I'll come towards you with speed. And so Allah has certainly honored us and helped us. And also, on PBS, it says made possible because of viewers like you. That is like so true. Dr. Amina, we have a team of 15 people. We have like actual Islamic researchers, like our writers who like also write for Houghton Mifflin and Simon and Schuster. So we have to pay them, right? And so literally this effort is only possible because of people who support it. And we don't ask for a lot, $30 for 4 months, right?
I mean,
And
that is
free
nothing.
shipping, right? So we try to make it as affordable as possible. But these works, and not just Noor Kids, there's so many amazing Muslim children's literature and work.
Right.
And what families, have to understand is that it is possible when we invest into it. So, we mashallah, are very, like smart with our money. But I would encourage parents to say, look, these are investments, and invest into your child in the first 9 years. I mean, there's not going to be a higher return on investment during any other age group.
I think you're absolutely right. This is Critical Talk with Professor Aminah Al-Deen. And I mean, Asr. And I have had a delicious time. And I want one of every one of those things back there on that shelf.
Inshallah. And I want everything on the I don't even know what's on the back shelf out there, but I'm excited. I'm excited.
Line it up in my study. I hope our viewing audience has understood that all of these shows are made possible by Muslim Network TV, which we are hoping that everybody, including Noor Kids, supports. And I have no doubt that I will be talking with you again.
Inshallah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in your efforts and also puts barakah on the efforts of Sound Vision. One of the things that I recognize personally, and, I think about this in many ways, so my story is my mom 5 years ago, she passed away. And when she passed away, I was like, what I want to do Noor Kids is a way for me to do Sadaqah Jariyah. And I think about impact, not just from people who actually read our books. I think about impact in terms of, hey, if we can inspire other creatives to do great work, then, that's a good deed in my piggy bank too. Yes. And Sound Vision is one of those organizations that inspired us to believe and to think about the possibilities of what we can do. And Sound Vision, mashallah, has been a pioneer in so many ways. Yeah. And I hope and I pray that we, with Noor Kids can continue to support Sound Vision and find new ways and efforts and do a better job of supporting Sound Vision as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to give my salams. Assalamu alaikum and peace to our listening audience. And we will be back.